There's a moment in every relationship, however small or unremarkable it might seem at the time, when everything shifts. It's not a dramatic confrontation or an earth-shattering realization. No, it's often something far quieter, something that, if you're not paying attention, slips through the cracks and buries itself deep in your subconscious. I never meant to see it. I had no reason to look. But that day, everything changed with a simple smile. It was a Monday, the kind of gray, dull day where nothing feels particularly special. The house was quiet, and I was lost in my own thoughts, something I'd gotten used to doing over the years. Sometimes, I think I live more in my head than in the real world. But that day, something felt off, though I couldn't put my finger on it. I had just finished a call with work, pacing through the living room, when I caught sight of her standing by the window, looking out at nothing in particular. She didn't notice me at first, and I watched her for a moment. Her shoulders were tense, her posture stiff, and her lips, they weren't smiling. And then she turned. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but there was a flicker in her eyes, a hint of something that wasn't quite there before. And that was the moment I knew. She smiled, but it wasn't like the smile I'd known. It wasn't warm, playful, or the kind of smile that made everything else fade away. No, this smile was different. It was a smile that said everything and nothing at once. It was a smile that told me she was hiding something, but it wasn't meant for me. It was meant for herself. A smile that wasn't meant to bring us closer, but to pull us apart. It was brief, a fleeting thing, as though she hadn't even realized she had done it. But in that moment, it felt like the weight of everything we had built together was suddenly hovering in the air between us. I stood frozen for a second, unsure of what to do. It wasn't a bad smile. There was nothing overtly sinister about it. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt something unfamiliar crawling under my skin. Was this how it all began? Was this where it all started? I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed in her, and maybe in me too. But I said nothing. I smiled back, though I'm not sure it was real. I wasn't sure of anything at that moment. We exchanged a few more words, small talk, like we always did, but my mind was elsewhere. And the smile haunted me. Later that night, as we sat in the living room watching a show, the smile kept flashing through my mind. I couldn't focus. I couldn't get rid of the image of her standing there, eyes distant, lips twisted in that strange, unsettling way. And then the phone buzzed. She reached for it almost immediately, her fingers moving quickly across the screen, her eyes never leaving the glow of the device. I watched her for a second, then looked away. It wasn't uncommon for her to check her phone, but tonight it felt different. She was more focused on it than usual, more distant. She excused herself to the bedroom. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I heard the door click shut behind her. My stomach churned. It wasn't like me to be suspicious. I wasn't the type to go looking for problems where there were none. But this felt different. There was a nagging feeling in the back of my mind, something I couldn't ignore. I waited. I tried to tell myself it was nothing. She was probably just texting a friend, or dealing with work. But the longer I sat there, the more my mind ran wild. What if it was something else? What if the smile wasn't the only thing that had changed? I tried to resist the urge to go after her, but I couldn't. The curiosity was too much. I walked quietly down the hallway and stood outside the bedroom door, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't want to invade her privacy. I didn't want to be the type of person who crossed that line. But there I was, listening, waiting. The silence in the room seemed endless. I could hear her soft voice, but the words were muffled. Then, there was a pause, and she let out a quiet laugh. A laugh that didn't sound like hers. It wasn't the light-hearted, carefree laugh I had grown so accustomed to. No, this was different. It was something deeper, more intimate, and it wasn't meant for me. I froze. My heart dropped. I shouldn't have been eavesdropping, but I couldn't pull myself away. I wanted to turn around and walk back, but my feet felt like they were rooted to the floor. The laughter faded, and there was a brief silence before she spoke again. This time, her words were clearer. "I'll see you soon. Don't worry about him." I didn't need to hear any more. My blood ran cold, and the room suddenly felt suffocating. I knew right then that everything had changed. I turned and walked away without making a sound. I didn't confront her. I didn't storm in. I didn't shout. I just walked away. And that was the beginning. The moment that everything I thought I knew about her, about us, began to unravel. What had she been hiding? Who was she talking to? Why hadn't I seen it sooner? I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just crossed a point of no return. And yet, I couldn't bring myself to confront her. Not yet. I needed to know more, to piece together the fragments of what was happening behind the closed doors of our home. But deep down I knew. The smile, the phone call, the laughter, it was all leading somewhere. And wherever that somewhere was, I wasn't sure I was ready for it. But I had to find out. I had to know if everything I thought I knew was a lie. It's strange how everything can feel so normal one moment, and then fall apart the next. The morning after I overheard her on the phone, everything seemed off. The air felt heavier, thicker somehow. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living in someone else's life, playing a part one hadn't rehearsed for. I tried to tell myself I was just overthinking it. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just being paranoid. After all, there were so many explanations. Maybe she had a friend who needed comforting. Maybe the laugh, the soft words, those were just signs of a friendship that had become something more comfortable over time. But even as I thought this, something deep inside me told me that I was lying to myself. I knew something was wrong. I could feel it. That afternoon, she went to work as usual, and I tried to do the same. I was sitting at my desk, trying to get through the endless emails that had piled up, but my mind kept drifting back to that moment. The smile, the phone call, the laugh that wasn't meant for me. I could hear her voice echoing in my mind. Don't worry about him. Those words lingered, twisting and turning in my head. Who was he? The weight of that question pressed down on me, and I realized I needed answers. I needed to know what was going on. I didn't want to be the kind of person who snoops. I didn't want to betray her trust, but the temptation was overwhelming. What if I was just imagining things? What if there was nothing to find? But then again, what if I wasn't? What if there was something right in front of me that I was too afraid to face? I told myself I wouldn't check her phone. I really did. I sat there, staring at my computer screen, trying to focus, but I couldn't. The nagging feeling wouldn't let up. So, I walked to the kitchen, where her phone sat on the counter, as it always did when she wasn't home. I hesitated for a moment, my fingers hovering over the device, my breath shallow. I should have just walked away, but I didn't. I picked it up. I unlocked it. And there it was. Messages that I never should have seen. I didn't even need to scroll far to find them. The screen was full of them. Texts from someone named Jacob. The name alone felt like a punch to the gut. I had never heard of him before, and yet, there he was, all over her phone. The messages started innocently enough, simple greetings, small talk. But as I scrolled, I noticed something I hadn't expected. She was sending him pictures of herself that she never sent to me. They weren't anything explicit, nothing that crossed any lines that could be clearly defined, but they were intimate in a way that only two people who had crossed a certain boundary could be. The way she posed, the way she smiled in the photos, it wasn't the same smile she gave me. The texts were worse. Can't wait to see you again. You make me feel alive. I miss the way you laugh. Each message was a dagger, cutting deeper than the last. How had I missed this? How had I not seen the signs before? I sat there in shock, staring at the screen. My hand was trembling as I read through more and more of their conversation. There were no words for how I felt in that moment. Just a deep, empty space where everything I thought was real had been. But what hit me hardest wasn't just the texts. It was the realization that she'd been hiding this from me. For how long? Weeks? Months? I didn't know. I wanted to scream, to confront her right then and there, but I couldn't. Part of me still couldn't believe it. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe I was overreacting. But I knew I wasn't. I didn't know what to do next. Should I confront her now? Should I ask her about it? Or should I wait for the right moment? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just a simple betrayal. This was something deeper. Something had shifted between us, and I had been too blind to see it. The next few days felt like I was walking through a fog. Everything I thought I knew about our relationship was suddenly in question. When she came home that evening, she was her usual self, smiling, asking how my day was, talking about her work. But I couldn't hear her. I couldn't focus on anything she was saying. The whole time, I was just waiting for the right moment to confront her. But every time I looked at her, I saw that smile again. The one that wasn't for me. I wanted to say something, to ask her outright. But what if she denied it? What if I had misunderstood everything? I couldn't live with that kind of uncertainty. So, I kept quiet. I pretended everything was normal, as if nothing had changed. But deep down, I knew nothing was the same. The next few days passed in a blur. My mind wouldn't stop racing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something I wasn't prepared for. Every conversation we had felt like a performance, a mask we both wore so we wouldn't have to face the truth. And then came the night I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had come home late, trying to finish up some work, and as I entered the house, I heard something I wasn't expecting. Soft laughter. Her voice. But it wasn't the usual happy laugh that I had always known. This laugh was different. It was lighter, freer, like she was with someone she didn't have to pretend with. I froze in the doorway, not sure what to do. The laughter faded, and I heard her voice clearly for the first time in days. "I'm so glad you're here. I missed you." It wasn't meant for me. I walked in quietly, and there she was, sitting on the couch with her phone in her hands. Her eyes met mine, and for a second, there was nothing but silence between us. But this time, I didn't look away. I didn't smile. I just stood there, waiting. I wanted to say something, to demand answers. But instead, I found myself asking a question I had been avoiding. "Who's Jacob?" Her eyes went wide, the color draining from her face in an instant. For a split second, it looked like she didn't know how to respond. I watched her, waiting for the words to come, but all I got was silence. Thick, suffocating silence. It was almost like the air itself had frozen between us, and for the first time in our entire relationship, the distance between us felt unbearable. I had never seen her like this before, caught off guard, vulnerable. I could see her struggling for a response, her lips moving slightly as if she were trying to form the right words, but nothing came out. She looked down at her phone, and I could see her fingers twitching, almost as though she was going to lock it, hide it from me again. The panic in her eyes was palpable, and for the first time, I realized how deeply she had been hiding something. "What's going on, Lena?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But something inside me was breaking. My heart was in my throat, and the overwhelming need for an answer consumed me. I had to know what was happening. I had to know if the life I thought we shared was just an illusion. She sighed, the sound heavy with guilt and regret. She didn't look at me right away, instead staring at her hands, fiddling with the corner of the phone case. I saw her struggling, trying to piece together a lie that would make sense, but I could feel the truth just under the surface, waiting to break free. Finally, she spoke, but her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "It's not what you think." I laughed bitterly, a short, hollow laugh that felt out of place even to me. "Of course it's not. It never is it?" I wasn't even sure if I was angry anymore. I was just numb. Every word she said only added to the confusion, making my mind spin faster. I wanted to shout, to demand more answers, but something stopped me. I could see she was struggling. She didn't want to tell me, but the truth was already leaking out, little by little. "What's not what I think?" I asked, pressing her for something more. "Who is Jacob?" Her eyes darted briefly to the phone again, as if trying to find an escape. Her hand hovered over it, but then, slowly, she put it down on the coffee table between us, her eyes never leaving mine. "He's someone from work," she said, the words coming out slowly, like she was testing them before releasing them fully into the air. "Someone from work?" I repeated, my voice steady but laced with disbelief. "How long has this been going on?" She shook her head, her lips trembling slightly as though she was about to cry. But no tears came. She simply stared at me, her face full of regret, as though the weight of everything was crushing her too. "It's not like you think," she said again, the words sounding almost rehearsed. "It started out innocent, just friendship, but it turned into something else. Something I didn't mean for it to be." I stood there, processing her words. It felt like my whole world was shifting beneath me. Something else. I thought of all the times I had come home late, all the moments I had brushed off her distant behavior, her distracted attitude. All of it was a lie. All of it was part of something I never saw coming. "So what is it then?" I asked, the question hanging between us like a heavy fog. "What's going on, Lena?" She looked at me, and for the first time in months, I saw the hesitation in her eyes, the uncertainty, the shame. She wasn't telling me everything. I could feel it, and I couldn't stand it any longer. He's not just a friend, okay?" she finally said, her voice breaking as she spoke the words. "I don't know how it happened. I wasn't looking for this, I swear. It just happened." I felt like the ground was pulled out from under me. It just happened. What did that even mean? I couldn't even process what she was saying. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, trying to keep my emotions in check. But inside, everything was spinning. Everything I thought I knew about my wife, about our relationship, was slowly slipping away. So, what, you're having an affair with him? I asked, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. She flinched, and I saw the pain in her eyes. But still, she didn't answer directly. She simply nodded, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't mean for it to happen. I swear. I looked away, unable to meet her gaze anymore. The weight of it all was too much. My thoughts were in chaos, spinning in circles, but one thing stood out above all else. The smile from earlier, the one that had felt like a dagger, was finally making sense. It wasn't a smile meant for me. It was meant for him, and I had been too blind to see it. I turned to walk away. I didn't know where I was going, or what I was even doing anymore. But I had to leave the room. I needed to breathe. I needed to think. I paced in the living room, my mind racing. I kept replaying everything she had said, every moment we had shared, every smile that now seemed like a lie. And then, the reality hit me. She was no longer the person I thought she was. The woman I had shared a life with, the one I had trusted with everything, had become someone else. The betrayal cut deep, but it wasn't just the affair. It was the years of trust that had been shattered in an instant, the quiet destruction of something I had fought for. And now, as I stood in the silence of our home, I realized one thing. It wasn't just about her. It was about me too. How had I let it get this far? How had I not seen the signs? As I tried to process everything, I knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning. The truth had come out, but it didn't feel like the end. In fact, I was starting to realize that the hardest part was yet to come. I don't know how long I stood there, pacing back and forth in the living room, trying to gather my thoughts. The seconds stretched into minutes, and the minutes felt like hours. I wasn't sure what I was even thinking anymore. My chest was tight, my heart pounding, but I couldn't make sense of anything. Everything about this betrayal, felt like it was happening to someone else, like I was stuck in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Lena was still sitting on the couch, not moving, her face pale and drawn, her eyes downcast. She hadn't said a word since I confronted her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her how long this had been going on, how long she had been lying to me, but I couldn't find the strength. Something inside me was shattered, and all I could do was stand there, paralyzed by the reality of it all. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke. Her voice was small, barely audible. I never meant to hurt you. I never wanted this to happen. I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since the confession. She looked different, smaller, somehow. The woman I thought I knew had crumbled before my eyes, and now I was faced with a stranger. She wasn't the person I had shared everything with for years. She wasn't the woman I trusted with my heart. She was someone else entirely, someone I couldn't recognize. But despite the pain, I couldn't ignore the flicker of something else deep inside me. A question, a whisper that had been nagging me ever since I first found those texts. Was it possible she wasn't the only one at fault here? I hadn't been perfect. In fact, I had been distant too, wrapped up in my own world. Could it be that I had missed something all along? Had I been blind to the changes in our marriage, just as much as she had been blind to the cracks in her own heart? I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts. I didn't have time for self-reflection now. There was something more pressing at hand. Did you ever think about me? I finally asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. My voice was steady, but underneath, there was a wave of raw emotion threatening to break through. Did you think about what this would do to me? To us? Lena looked up, her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. She didn't need to. The answer was clear in the silence that stretched between us. You've been lying to me, I said, the weight of the words sinking deep into the pit of my stomach. All this time, you've been lying. You've been keeping secrets. You've been giving someone else the parts of you I thought were mine. Her face crumpled, and I saw the guilt wash over her. But the anger, the deep, burning rage inside me, was beginning to rise. I couldn't just stand here, pretending everything was okay. I couldn't forgive her just like that. I couldn't ignore what had happened. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered again, her voice breaking, the words barely escaping her lips. I didn't respond immediately. I couldn't. There were so many things I wanted to say, but no words could ever convey the depth of betrayal I felt. Instead, I walked over to the window, my hands pressed against the cool glass. I needed distance, space to think, to breathe. The silence between us stretched longer now, and I could feel the tension building, like a storm that was waiting to break. "I don't know what to do with this," I said, finally turning back to face her. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if I want to fix this." The truth of that hit me harder than anything she could have said. I didn't know if I could forgive her. I didn't know if we could come back from this. For the first time in years, I felt like I was looking at her not as the woman I loved, but as a stranger, a person who had betrayed my trust, my love. She stood up slowly, taking a few tentative steps toward me. "Please," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do anything. I don't want to lose you. I love you." But those words, those empty, desperate words, didn't have the power to undo what had already been done. They didn't have the power to erase the months of lies, the stolen moments, the intimacy that was no longer ours. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to make her feel the same pain I felt. Another part of me, some small, weak part, wanted to forgive her. Maybe it was the years we had spent together. Maybe it was the good times we shared. But that part was shrinking, drowning under the weight of what I had learned. I took a step back, my mind racing. This wasn't just about her affair anymore. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about everything that had led us here. The little things I had ignored. The moments I had brushed off. The part of me that was afraid to see the truth when it was right in front of me. "I don't know if I can do this anymore," I said, my voice raw. "I don't know if I can trust you again." The words tasted bitter on my tongue, but they were the truth. And sometimes, the truth doesn't feel like a relief. Sometimes, the truth just feels like the end. She collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. She reached out for me, but I stepped back, shaking my head. "I need time," I said, though I didn't even know if time would be enough. "I need space. I need to figure out what this is, what I'm supposed to do." But even as I said the words, I knew. I knew that no matter how much time I had, no matter how much space, things would never be the same. Once trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to rebuild it. And even if I did try, I wasn't sure I could ever look at her the same way again. I walked out of the room, the weight of the decision heavy on my shoulders. What came next, I wasn't sure. But the path ahead was clear. And it was a path I would have to walk alone. And as I left the house, I knew one thing for sure. Whatever happened next, it wouldn't be the same. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the pain in her eyes, the tear-streaked cheeks, the way her voice trembled when she said she loved me. But the truth was, I didn't know what to believe anymore. I didn't know if the woman who had been my wife for the last 7 years was still the same person standing in front of me. And as I lay awake in the dark, the question that kept looping in my mind was the same. How did we get here? The next morning, I could feel the weight of the silence as soon as I woke up. It wasn't just the quiet of the house. It was the kind of silence that fills the space between two people when something unspoken hangs over them. When everything has shifted, but no one dares to acknowledge it. I stayed in bed longer than usual, pretending to sleep, but really, I was just avoiding the inevitable. I didn't know how to face her again. I didn't know what to say. Eventually, I dragged myself out of bed, and there she was, sitting at the kitchen table. She hadn't been asleep either, and we both knew it. She didn't look at me when I walked in, and I didn't look at her. The air between us felt thick, suffocating. It was like standing in the middle of a storm that hadn't quite broken yet, a quiet before the inevitable explosion. "Coffee?" she asked, her voice tentative, like she wasn't sure whether it was okay to speak. I nodded without answering, unable to look at her. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell her everything. How much it hurt, how everything felt like it was falling apart, how her betrayal had left me hollow inside. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I sat down across from her, my mind racing. The silence stretched on between us, a distance that felt wider with each passing second. She poured the coffee, her hands trembling slightly, and then slid the cup in front of me. But I didn't reach for it. I just sat there, staring at it like it was a foreign object. The tension in the room was unbearable, each second feeling like an eternity. Finally, she broke the silence. "Are you going to say something?" Her voice was barely audible, almost fragile. She was hurting too, but I could feel it. Her pain was different from mine. She had already made her choice. She had already stepped outside our marriage, and now she was trying to convince herself that everything could still be fixed. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. I couldn't sit there anymore. I couldn't pretend that things were normal, because they weren't. The reality of what was happening was too much to bear. You've been hiding something from me for so long, Lena, I said, my voice low but firm. And I don't know if I can ever trust you again. I don't know if I even want to try. Her eyes filled with tears again, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. Not now. Not after everything. I know I've hurt you. I know I've made mistakes, she said, her voice breaking. But please, don't give up on us. Don't give up on me. I shook my head, the words I had been holding back finally spilling out. I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if I can keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. There it was, the truth that had been sitting in the back of my mind for so long. The truth that I had been avoiding, the one that I didn't want to face, but knew I had to. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, where I wasn't sure if I was loved, if I was enough. I don't know what to do, Lena. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I even want to try anymore. The words stung as they left my lips, but they were the truth. And the truth had to come out. She stood up quickly, her chair scraping against the floor as she rushed to me. Please, please don't say that. I'll do anything. I'll fix this. We can fix this, together. But I stepped back, holding up my hands. How, Lena? How can we fix this? How do we go back to a place where I trust you again? Where I can look at you and not see the person who's been lying to me? She fell silent, her face crumpling as she realized there were no easy answers, no quick fixes. The truth was too big to sweep under the rug, and no matter how much she wanted to make it go away, it wouldn't. It couldn't. I don't know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. But I want to try. I looked at her, my mind racing, my heart in turmoil. The woman I had loved, the one I had shared everything with, was standing in front of me, broken, vulnerable, and desperate. And I didn't know if I could fix her, or if I even wanted to. The silence between us stretched again, this time thicker than before. I could feel the weight of the decision hanging over me. Did I want to try to rebuild this? Did I want to forgive her and risk being hurt again? Or was it time to walk away, to finally face the reality that our marriage was beyond repair? I didn't have the answer. Not yet. But the longer I stood there, the more I realized that this wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about me too, about what I was willing to accept, about whether or not I could ever trust her again. And in that moment, I realized something even more terrifying. I didn't know who I was anymore, either. I didn't know if the man standing in front of her was the same one who had walked into this marriage years ago. The hurt, the pain, the betrayal, it had changed me. It had changed us both. And I didn't know where we would go from here. The days after that conversation blurred together. Time didn't feel real anymore. It was just a series of moments filled with empty glances, silence, and the occasional attempt at normalcy that never quite worked. We went through the motions, breakfast together, a forced smile, small talk, but underneath it all, the gulf between us had grown so wide, it felt impossible to bridge. I couldn't look at Lena without seeing everything we had lost, and I couldn't stop wondering what had really been going on behind my back. Who was the person she had become while I wasn't paying attention? Was this the woman I had married? Or had she always been someone else? Each night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the darkness pressing in from all sides. I couldn't sleep. I didn't know how to. There was a dull ache in my chest that wouldn't go away, a constant reminder that something had been broken, something that could never be fixed. The thought of what Lena had done, how she had kept it from me for so long, played on a loop in my mind, and the more I thought about it, the more the anger began to simmer beneath the surface. I had always been the kind of person who avoided conflict. I didn't want to fight, didn't want to rock the boat. I was the one who kept the peace, the one who smiled even when things weren't right. But now, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. Was I the man who let it all slide, or the one who finally confronted the truth, no matter how painful it was? One evening, when Lena was at work, I found myself standing in front of the old bookshelf we had filled together over the years. Books we had read, novels we had shared, even the ones she had recommended to me. I ran my fingers over the worn spines, and for a moment, it almost felt like everything was normal. Almost. But then I remembered, it wasn't normal. It hadn't been for a long time. That was when the thought hit me, like a lightning bolt. Maybe she's not the only one who's changed. I could feel the weight of that realization sinking in. I had been so focused on Lena and the affair that I hadn't stopped to think about myself. Had I changed too? Had I become the kind of person who ignored the signs, who closed his eyes to the things that were wrong, simply because I didn't want to face them? Had I allowed the cracks in our marriage to grow too deep before even noticing them? I walked to the window and looked out at the street below. The world outside was moving on, unaware of the storm that had hit my life. People walked by, laughing, talking, living their lives. But I wasn't living anymore. Not fully. I was existing in this suspended state, caught between anger, hurt, and a strange sort of numbness. I thought about the words Lena had said. I never meant to hurt you. I had heard them, but somehow, they didn't comfort me. They felt like a half-hearted apology, like a desperate attempt to fix something that couldn't be fixed. Maybe she was sorry. Maybe she really was. But was that enough? Was that all I needed to hear to forgive her? Was it even possible to forgive her after everything? I shook my head, my thoughts spinning. The truth was, I didn't know what I wanted anymore. I didn't know what I needed. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that we could somehow heal and move past this. But another part of me, the part that had been hurt so deeply, knew that forgiveness wasn't something that came easily. And yet, there was this nagging feeling, this small voice in the back of my mind, that kept whispering, what if you're just as much to blame as she is? I stood there, wrestling with the question, when I heard the sound of the front door opening. Lena was home. I didn't want to face her, not yet. I wasn't ready. But she had to be, didn't she? We couldn't keep avoiding it. We couldn't pretend that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. So, I took a deep breath, walked into the living room, and found her standing in the doorway, looking at me, uncertain. Can we talk? She asked quietly, her voice trembling slightly. She knew what was coming. We both did. I nodded, but the words didn't come right away. I didn't know how to start this conversation, or if there even was a right way to do it. So much had been left unsaid, so much had been hidden, and now, we were both standing in the wreckage of what was left. Do you want to fix this? I finally asked. The question hung in the air, heavy and raw, and for the first time, I saw her face change. It wasn't just sadness I saw now. It was fear. Fear that I might walk away. I do, she whispered. I want to fix this. I don't want to lose you. Her words stung, but there was something in her voice, something desperate, that made me wonder if she truly understood the depth of the damage she had caused. I don't know if we can, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I don't know if I can trust you again, Lena. I don't know if I can look at you the same way after all of this. Her eyes filled with tears, and I saw her hands tremble as she reached for me, but I pulled back. Please, don't. Don't try to convince me that it's all okay now. It's not. You've hurt me in a way I don't think I can forget, and maybe I don't even want to. For a moment, the room was still. I could hear her breathing, her quiet sobs, but I couldn't move. I couldn't find the words to comfort her, and maybe I wasn't supposed to. This wasn't about her. This was about me, about what I needed, and what I was willing to accept. I don't know if I can forgive you, Lena, I said, the words slipping out like a cold truth I had been holding back for too long. I don't know if I even want to try anymore. The room seemed to shrink as I spoke, and I saw the hope drain from her face. She didn't speak right away, and I didn't know if I was waiting for an apology or some kind of reassurance. But neither came. Then what happens now? She finally asked, her voice broken. I looked at her, my heart heavy with uncertainty. I don't know. I don't know what happens now. But we can't keep pretending that things are the same. I can't pretend that everything's okay when it's not. And that was the truth. The truth that neither of us was ready to face. We were standing on the edge of something we both feared, and there was no going back. No matter what happened next, nothing would ever be the same. The days following that conversation felt like a slow descent into uncertainty. I tried to carry on with my routine, but nothing felt the same. Every glance at Lena, every moment of silence between us, reminded me of the truth I could no longer ignore. Our marriage was not what I thought it was. I wasn't sure it ever had been. I walked through the house, through the motions, but I didn't feel like myself anymore. I felt like a ghost in my own life. Lena was different too. She still tried to reach out, still tried to make small talk, but I couldn't bring myself to respond in the same way. It wasn't just the affair, it wasn't just the betrayal of trust. It was everything that had led up to this moment. How long had she been unhappy? How long had we both been living in this quiet version of our relationship, pretending that everything was fine? We had both ignored the warning signs, the subtle shifts, the moments where we both should have spoken up. But we hadn't. And now, here we were, standing in the wreckage of everything we had built. I avoided her eyes as much as I could, even when she stood right next to me. Her presence felt suffocating. The intimacy we once shared now felt like a distant memory, a fragile illusion that could be shattered with a single word. I wanted to scream at her, ask her how she could do this to me, how she could betray me in such a way, but when I looked at her, I saw only a broken woman, someone who had been caught in her own lies. She didn't need to be reminded of her mistakes. She knew them all too well. But the truth was, as much as I wanted to blame her completely, I couldn't. The anger I felt toward her was mirrored by a strange sense of self-loathing. What kind of man had I become to let this go on for so long without seeing it? How had I missed the cracks that had formed between us, so subtle at first, but growing deeper with each passing day? I thought I was being a good husband, providing, being there when she needed me. But was I? Or had I been so absorbed in my own world, in my own complacency, that I had failed to notice the pain in her eyes? I didn't have answers, and that uncertainty gnawed at me. I wanted to fix things. I wanted to believe that we could somehow salvage what we had. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that the damage was too deep. There were too many unspoken truths, too many things we had both avoided. We couldn't keep pretending. But could we walk away from all we had built? Could we end it, knowing that the love we once shared might never be enough to rebuild the trust we had lost? It was a week later when Lena approached me again, but this time, there was a different look in her eyes. It wasn't the desperation I had seen before. It was something more somber. She looked tired, exhausted, even, as if the weight of everything was finally catching up with her. "I know I've been asking a lot of you," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I need to ask you something else." I turned to face her, my stomach tightening at the thought of what was coming. I had spent days trying to push these conversations aside, hoping that things would somehow work themselves out. But they weren't. I wasn't sure they ever would. "What is it?" I asked, my voice flat. Lena hesitated, her eyes flicking down to the floor before meeting mine again. "Do you still love me?" she asked, the question hanging between us like a heavy weight. I was taken aback by the simplicity of it, the rawness of it. It wasn't a question I had expected, and for a moment, I didn't know how to answer. Did I still love her? How could I? How could I love someone who had done this to me? And yet, as much as I hated to admit it, there was still a part of me that loved her. A part of me that remembered the woman she had been, the woman I had fallen in love with. But love wasn't enough. Not anymore. "I don't know," I said, the words feeling like they were ripped from me. "I don't know if I can love you the same way after everything that's happened." Her face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw a real fear in her eyes. Not the fear of losing me, but the fear that she had lost herself. That the person she had been, the one I had loved, was gone. "Please," she whispered. "I need you to decide. I can't keep living like this. I need to know if you're willing to fight for us, or if this is the end." I looked at her, my heart heavy with the weight of her words. The room felt like it was closing in on me. How could I make this decision? How could I decide whether or not I wanted to try again, when everything inside me was broken? "I don't know," I said again, my voice shaking. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to forgive you, and I don't know if I can ever trust you again." Her eyes welled with tears, but she didn't look away. She stood there, waiting for something, an answer, a sign, anything. But there was nothing. I couldn't give her anything. "I've hurt you," she said, her voice so soft it was almost lost in the air. "But I'm not the only one who's hurt, am I?" I blinked, caught off guard by the statement. But she was right. We had both hurt each other. I had failed to see her pain, and she had turned to someone else to fill the emptiness. We had both allowed things to get this bad, and now we were standing on the edge, with no clear path forward. I wanted to walk away, to shut the door on everything that had happened, and just escape. But something inside me couldn't do it. I couldn't just give up, not yet. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Lena," I said, my voice rough. "But maybe we should take a step back. Maybe we need time. Time to figure out who we are, who we want to be, apart from each other." Her face fell, but she didn't argue. She knew. She knew that time might be the only thing that could give us the clarity we both desperately needed. "I'll give you all the time you need," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just hope. I hope we can find a way back to each other." And with that, the conversation ended. No resolution. No happy ending. Just an uncertain silence that hung between us. leaving the future wide open and terrifying in its unpredictability. We were at a crossroads, and neither of us knew which direction to take. Weeks passed since that conversation. It was a time of silence, introspection, and painful growth. Neither of us knew if we could come back from what had happened. But we both knew one thing. We couldn't keep living in the limbo of unresolved tension. The distance between us had grown too wide. But deep down, we both still cared. We had to figure out what came next, whether that was healing together or walking away. I spent a lot of time on my own, working through my own emotions, trying to understand why I had allowed things to spiral. Lena did the same. She took a step back too, focusing on herself, her own self-worth, and the choices she had made. She went to therapy, and I did too. I wasn't sure if it would help, but I realized I needed it. We both did. There was a strange sense of clarity that came from that time apart. I began to understand the mistakes I had made, the moments where I had shut down, where I had turned away instead of leaning in. Lena, on the other hand, learned about her own feelings of inadequacy and how she had sought validation from someone else when she felt disconnected rather than communicating with me. We were both broken, but we were slowly learning to repair ourselves individually. One evening, as I walked in from work, I saw her sitting on the couch, a book in her hands. There was a calmness in the air. She was no longer the woman I had been angry at, and I wasn't the man who felt lost and betrayed. We had both changed, but in ways that made us stronger. "I've been thinking," she said as I sat beside her, "about us, about how we got here, and I think I finally understand what I need to do." I turned to her, waiting for the words. My heart was open, but still fragile. "I can't undo what I did," she continued, her voice steady now, but filled with honesty. "But I'm ready to try. I'm ready to build a future with you, if you're willing to try too." It was a simple statement, but it was everything. It was the acknowledgement of the pain we had caused each other, and the courage to rebuild from the ashes. There was no guarantee that things would go back to the way they were, or that we would never face struggles again. But it was a promise to try, to be better, to be more honest with each other. "I want to try," I said, my voice quieter than usual, but firm. "I want to see if we can make this work." We both smiled at the same time. It was a fragile smile, but it was real. A smile that held hope for the future, even if we couldn't see it all clearly yet. For the first time in a long time, we were standing together, facing the unknown, but no longer alone. We didn't need to rush things. There was no quick fix to the broken pieces, but we both understood that healing didn't happen overnight. It would take time, patience, and the willingness to grow, together and apart. But what mattered was that we were both committed to the process. Months later, we found ourselves in a better place, not because everything was perfect, but because we had faced the pain, the mistakes, and the betrayal, and we had chosen to heal instead of giving up. Our relationship wasn't the same, it couldn't be, but in its place was something stronger, something built on a foundation of trust that we had worked hard to rebuild, brick by brick. I looked at Lena one night as we sat together on the same couch where we had had that painful conversation months before. The weight of our past was still there, but it no longer defined us. We had created something new, something stronger. "I love you," I said, my voice filled with meaning, finally saying it without the weight of the past dragging it down. "I love you too," she replied, her smile more genuine than ever before. We both knew that life wasn't perfect, and that we would continue to face challenges. But for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. We were no longer two people trapped in our mistakes. We were two people learning to forgive, to grow, and to love again. And maybe that was enough. It was a new beginning, not just for our relationship, but for who we had become. And that felt like a victory in itself.